Here's what happened. For the longest time, if you and I were to get into a conversation, my default thought that then became my assumption is that I could not tell you my honest opinions, views, or beliefs. I wouldn't be able to. I'd be so scared because I imagined that what would happen if I did that would be an angry mob who would pop out of nowhere and start yelling at me of telling me how bad of a person I am and how shitty I am because they don't believe or they don't agree with my opinions, my views, or my beliefs. That was an assumption I made. And it's ridiculous to think that imaginary people are going to pop out of nowhere and start yelling at me. But that held me back for many years, held me back in my personal relationships and in business because I couldn't create genuine connection because I wasn't showing up in an honest way. Not to mention, if I had like insights or a way to help someone, I wouldn't feel like I could share that because they may be thinking something totally different with their views or their beliefs. So if you are struggling with assumptions in your life of feeling like they're holding you back or that you are feeling like they're not helping to move you towards who you want to become, we're going to get into it. This is Make Burnout Extinct. I'm Robert David Weeks. Today, I'm getting into assumptions. And man, there is a lot of moments in our life where we can create assumptions. So I want to first define for you what assumptions are. I want to share an example so we're on the same page for what you can watch out for assumptions, because from there, I want to share with you how it connects to burnout to reinforce why you can trade in assumptions for something that I think is going to be so much more helpful for you. And that is action. And it's not, I know this through my own personal experiences. I have a few that I want to share with you that I feel you are going to resonate with, vibe with, and can relate to in your own life. So let's get into it for the definition. So we're on the same page. Assumptions. How I define it is that it is believing something to be true with no proof. So here's my example for you. This is the best one I got that comes to mind right now. I'm thinking, so you and I'm thinking we're going to go to a restaurant. And let's say it's an Italian restaurant because my life partner, she loves Italy. So Italian restaurant. And you and I know nothing about the food quality in this restaurant. There have been no reviews that we've seen about this restaurant. There is no friends or family or anyone that we know of that has gone to this restaurant that's told us if the food quality is good or shitty, or amazing or shitty. So what happens is you could decide to go into that restaurant with an assumption. What that assumption is either it's on the spectrum. You could either think to yourself, it's about to be the most amazing food ever because I'm a huge fan of Italian food. I vibe with it. This is going to be awesome. Or you could go to the other extreme, which is like, this is going to be the shittiest food I've ever eaten because I don't like Italian food. I hate it. It sucks. So, or you can be somewhere in between on the spectrum. That right there is an assumption because you have no proof about the food quality of this restaurant. You've never eaten at this restaurant. You don't know anyone else that's eaten at this restaurant. So that right there for you is an assumption. So I hope that can help you to recognize, okay, what else in my life have I made certain assumptions about? And you might even have one, because again, I asked you that at the beginning of you might be struggling with assumptions driving your life. You might have one that sticks up to you right now in your mind of an assumption that you've made based off of how I just shared it with you. So how it connects to burnout, that's really important. So to expand upon the problem, what can come up is that we can have these stress bubbles and this anxiety bubble come up based off of our assumptions. And I will use the example I shared with you, the one I had when it comes to my honest views, beliefs, and opinions. So I chose not to take action and actually express my honest views, beliefs, and opinions. Therefore, I could never, therefore, for many years, I couldn't acknowledge whether or not the screaming mob would appear. Therefore, I had the stress bubbles and the anxiety bubbles come up of, oh my gosh, this potentially could happen. Oh my gosh, how am I going to react to this group if they show up? How am I going to navigate life from this point on? All the drama that fills in, that pumps into me. So I have no way of closing that loop unless I take the action to find out if the mob shows up. So that stress and anxiety is then compounding if we stay stuck. And that compounds over time towards the first red flag of burnout, or the first red flag of burnout, which is chronic exhaustion. Not to mention, let's say I'm already beating myself up internally of like, dude, you could totally like say your honest views and beliefs and opinions. Like just go for it and figure out if the mob's going to show up. Or I know it because I mean, again, how ridiculous that sounds. I can intellectually can know that a mob's not going to show up, but the rest of my body hasn't connected to that yet. So therefore I get stuck. And all of a sudden now I'm beating myself up internally, mentally. That negativity, if it has no way of releasing by me taking the action, I am going to hit the second red flag of burnout, which is then negativity in my work that seeps into my personal life and seeps into my outlook on the world. And then the third one for that assumption, let's say, of not sharing my honest views and beliefs, is that in work, let's say someone shares a direction to go for a strategy with a work project, and I don't agree with it because of past evidence that I can point to, and I don't share that honest view that I have based off of my past experiences. All of a sudden, because I'm worried about this, screaming mob popping up, all of a sudden I am now worse off for my performance in my job. So I know that last one, that's a stretch. I know. I hear you. I know that's a stretch for that connection point, but I hope that can also spark for you some other connection points when it comes to terrible performance in your work. All right. So that right there is how it connects to burnout. Now let's look at what happens when you trade assumptions, or let's dive into it for trading assumptions with action. Okay. What happens when you have action then is, for this example of me sharing my honest views and beliefs, by taking the action and not letting the assumption drive my decision making, I then realize that there's no mob that's going to show up. I have now broken through that assumption. And all of a sudden I have realized, looking back, I'm like, man, I just wasted all those years assuming this, and it did not come true. So by taking the action, you're going to create clarity, and that can do a few things. So one, it's going to just tell you whether or not it's going to work out or not. Maybe the person doesn't agree with my views and starts screaming at me. Okay, well, at least I found out. All right, that showed up. And then I realized I survived this. So what can happen is it helps to ease the mental load that you have with all the anxiety of potential uncertainty about the future. You've created certainty of like, you're now witnessing in front of you what's happening because you took action. So that decreases the mental load. And what it can do is it can build the confidence that you have within yourself to know that you can handle this, that you can survive this. And what it does is it starts to create a remembrance for you of, oh yeah, any other future situations like this, I can remember that I either survived this or this is what happened, for the proof. So now you're creating proof and it's no longer an assumption. So that is really helpful to realize where in your life, if you were to think about this, where in your life can you take action on certain assumptions that you have made? And these assumptions could go back, could go way back, right? We don't have to we don't have to go too far back of realizing it, but there could be some assumptions that intellectually you get and you've been resistant to taking action on to help the rest of your body realize that this is an assumption and it doesn't have to be the reality. So going back, I think about it for sharing my honest views and beliefs. That one could have been because, I'm the youngest of three boys. I got two older brothers. There's a lot of strong opinions in my family. That could have been where I got this connection point, where I couldn't share it. And then by seeing what happens online when people don't agree and the mob mentality that happens of people getting canceled, that's where I maybe drew the two conclusions where imaginary screaming mob is going to show up. But it doesn't really matter if I understand that this is an assumption and I can move through this assumption through the action that I take, right? So it doesn't need to be something that you got to get stuck in for all the past memories and experiences and all that. It can help with creating the connection points to realize that it's an assumption. Another one that came up for me that I want to get into for an assumption is that for my career, for many years as a business owner, I felt like I could not move up in my level of connecting with people that were further ahead of me in the same industry, or that I admired for their work or their what they were doing for their impact in the world. I just felt I couldn't reach out to them. I intellectually felt like, okay, I could do it, but I'm just assuming that I'm going to waste their time, or I'm assuming that I'm going to be a burden, or I'm assuming that I am going to just be a pain in their ass for sending a message, a genuine message. So what did I do? I got stuck. I started beating myself up mentally. I started going down that spiral. The stress bubble was bubbling up. The anxiety bubble was coming up. And I was holding myself back and getting stuck in going down that spiral towards burnout. Now, what I had to do was I had to push through the resistance and take action and start to send out the message to certain people I admired. And this is what happened. I'd send out messages, and most of the time I wouldn't get a response back. But I wasn't a pain in their ass. I wasn't a burden to them. I just didn't get a message back. So for me, that helped to create momentum to continue to reach out to different people and connect and expand my network. Or, I think about it as my connections for business. So by doing that, what happened was then all of a sudden I connected with someone and they messaged me back. And then all of a sudden we're connected and we're doing a collaboration. And I remember, like, for speaking opportunities, this is a way I got other speaking opportunities, was I would just send out messages. And that helped me with then my public speaking career, my professional speaking career. And that created momentum for me of realizing, oh, I actually can speak and help other people and share my views and my experiences and my insights. And I can do this for money. And this is from a kid who was shaking and terrified to even ask a simple question in front of a group of people. So all of a sudden, not only am I breaking the assumption that I had with reaching out to other people that were further ahead of me or people I admire in their space of like, oh, I can actually do that. And yes, maybe sometimes it's a burden for them, but for other people, they were really appreciative of me sending a message, and I got a message back. And then for the most part, so I wouldn't get a message early on back. So I broke that assumption, but then it also caused me to break another assumption, which was, oh, like, can I really step up and communicate and share my insights and share my ideas, even though I stumble over my words sometimes and I can feel like it's messy for how I'm sharing my ideas and my views? Oh yeah, I can. Can I improve this skill over years? Oh yeah, I can. All of a sudden, I can then take it in a career. Then I can start a podcast. All of a sudden, now what's possible for me in my communication? That also helped to break other assumptions. So you can realize how this can become an fucking awesome momentum wheel when you start taking action and moving through these assumptions. Another one that came up for me, specifically with this podcast and this show overall, especially if you're watching this video, is that I assumed how much energy it was going to take to record 3 episodes in a week without actually even doing it. And it took another person and their experience with putting out 3 episodes a week for me to have the courage to actually try this out, rather than holding myself back with the assumptions and saying, oh, because in the past, which I've shared before, this is my 4th podcast, 4th show that I'm doing. So in the past, I would do like, an episode out a week. And I thought that's all I could handle for capacity, for energy. There's no way I could handle more. But it took someone else to say, oh yeah, they're doing 3 episodes, and for me to then take the courage I have within me to try it out for myself. And then now I've been doing it. And yes, is it hard work? Absolutely. But is it so exciting to be able to share with you more insights, stories, and conversations with other people with you? Yeah, like that's so awesome. I'm also honing in my skills. So it helps out in that way. So it's a beautiful gift that's given to be able to take action and actually break through that assumption. And then it opens up more possibilities of what else am I capable of for my energy and my capacity. So again, what can be helpful is to dive into where in your life are these assumptions coming up? All right. Are there a few other ones that are popping up for you? Maybe there's one with relationships. I got one for you. Assuming I know how my partner feels about a show that I want to watch without asking her if she wants to watch the show, what do you think is going to happen? There's going to be some tension that builds up because of that. And then I have to go through those conversations. So instead of assuming, I can just ask and save a lot of potential time and stress and pain that can come up by just asking, "Hey, like, do you want to watch this show?" And then we have a conversation about it and figure out what other show we want to go into. So that could be another one, is relationships for you, of where you're assuming certain things. Maybe it's realizing, oh yeah, my friends are always welcome to come to my place and hang out and come visit for a weekend. But do they actually know that? Have you sent them the message of saying, oh yeah, you can totally come in anytime for the weekend. It's totally cool. And then it's assuming that you think they remember that. You might be needing a reminder. So that could be another moment where that could come up for you. So to get into for the play that you can add to your Burnout-Proof playbook to help you out with this for assumptions is it's the play to identify what you want. What do you want for your life? Of who you want to become, the vision you have for your life. Understanding that, just writing that out. What do you want for your relationships? What are you wanting for your career? What are you wanting for, when it comes to relationships, your friendships, or for partnership? What are you wanting for your health and fitness? What are you wanting? And what all it takes for that is some space. Give yourself some space. It doesn't have to be a full day. It could be a few minutes of space that you're dedicating to identifying what it is that you want. Because when you can have that, you bring your self-awareness into it. You're then able to determine in your life where these assumptions, I'm going back to like having to say this 5 times fast. You're then able to determine where these assumptions are in your life that have been holding you back. And from there, you can identify then what is the action that you're going to take in order to test if this assumption is true or not. So that goes back to sending the message out to that person and not assuming that they're going to think you're a pain in their ass for sending them a message or feel like a burden for sending them a message. You're just going to send the message and see what happens. And use, of course, common sense in that. Then the other one is asking someone out on a date. You won't know unless you try it. So you might as well go for it. You know, if you've had no connection with them or no previous conversations with them, I mean, the percentage chance could be low, but you just don't know unless you try it. So that could be one. With career, for that upcoming project, being able to volunteer if you want to volunteer for that project, rather than assume that someone else is better than you, they'll volunteer and take that project on. You don't have to assume there. You can just take action and volunteer and see what happens. Maybe someone else does come in and take the project over, but at least you tried. At least you knew that was going to happen, rather than assuming it and causing yourself to build up all that stress and tension and pressure and anxiety that doesn't serve you in that moment because you just don't know. When it comes to your health and fitness, not assuming that you can't, or to stop assuming that you can't take a few minutes each day to create movement in your day. What if you could? What if you could just go out for that walk? What if you could just hang out in your chair and move around a little bit? Shake it out. What if you could? That's how you can look at this. What if you could? What if you could? What does that then open up for you? Because maybe you go for a few minutes of movement each day, and then all of a sudden that leads to like the hour workout. All of a sudden you're focusing in on your posture. Then you're noticing differences in energy. And then you're able to take that energy and channel that into your career. And then from there, how you show up for your family, or show up in your relationship, or show up in the friendships that you have. all of these things can be interconnected as well. And that's really important to realize. Life is just not a bunch of different compartments. It is all intertwined. It's this beautiful weave of epicness. And when we can move past these assumptions that we've made, all of a sudden we are continuing to open up more doorways of possibilities for our life. And as you continue to move towards who you want to become and the vision you have for your life, there's going to be then new goals to move towards, new visions to set out. And that's what's so exciting, is to grow as a human being and to continue to move towards other possibilities that you may have never even imagined a few years ago. How it starts, though, is the action, taking the action on these certain assumptions that have come up in your life. And I want you to realize you're not alone, and to remember you're not perfect. Yeah, you may assume once in a while after this conversation. That happens. It's recognizing that and trying your best to improve it on next time. But there's no point to beat yourself up internally of like, oh, shit, there I go. I assumed again. No point to beat yourself up. It's in the past. Let it go. Let the mistakes go so that you can continue to move forward in your life and show up. And I want to remind you, you're capable of this. And yeah, there's going to be no one right way. I go back to this quote from John Butcher. There is no one right way, but there is a right way for you. And through that action, you can start to figure that out for yourself. And this play that I just outlined for you of identify what you want, identify the action that can get you there, then commit to that action is going to be really important. And then honor the resistance that's going to come up and then do the action. That right there can be a play you can implement in your Burnout-Proof playbook right there for you. You got this. If you like this episode, please don't forget to rate this podcast to help get this message out of make burnout extinct. And you absolutely can share what resonates with you from this episode by connecting with me on Instagram or LinkedIn. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode. I don't take that for granted. Excited to reconnect again soon.